Coming Home. Written by Ink in My Heart and on the Page. And read by Eleanor Elizabeth. Chapter 8, Part 8. Peter! Peter! Tony snapped as he heard the phone clatter to the ground loudly. There was a scraping on the other end of the line before it went silent. Sorry! Ned's voice was back. Sorry, Peter dropped his phone. I think he's out. Wait, no, he's waking up again. Flash, help him sit up. Why is he sick? Tony demanded, his heart beating painfully in his chest. He felt cold and sweaty and was itching to get into his suit and fly to Peter. They hadn't caught it in time. Someone had leaked that Peter was back in their care, and before they could get a handle on it, the media had raced down to Peter's school, the tower, and even to May's apartment to get the inside scoop. While Pepper and Tony had been safe in the tower, Happy had been on his way to pick up Peter when Tony had directed him to keep May safe. Pepper had called the school to give them a heads up, while he tried to call Peter and get him to stay in the school. But his son had never picked up the phone. Then Friday projected a news report of his kids surrounded and then being pushed through them and taking off running. As soon as Friday tracked Peter's location, he sent the coordinates to Rhodey. He yelped as Pepper took the phone from his hand, giving him a stern look. Don't yell at Ned, Pepper scolded, switching the phone to speaker. Ned, hi, it's Pepper. Oh, hi, Mrs. Stark. Ned, why is Peter ill? Pepper asked. Did something happen at school, or did a reporter do anything? It was all the cameras and yelling, Ned explained. It gave him a really bad migraine. He gets them when loud noises and bright lights trigger it. Wait, hold on. Ned? Pepper frowned. There was no response, and she shot Tony a worried look. Ned? Tony took back the phone before Pepper's tight grip could crack the casing. No yelling, remember? He deserved the dirty look she shot him. Tony, I'm here. Rhodey's voice came over the phone a moment later. Both Tony and Pepper let out a sigh of relief at their friend's voice. Honey Bear, you have no idea how good it is to hear your voice, Tony croaked out. How's Peter? He's not looking too hot, Rhodey said. I've got to get him to the car. Don't stress. I've got him. Just get him home, Tony gritted out. I will. Promise. Hope you've got enough to feed 4 teenagers, because I'm bringing the others with me, Rhodey said. Thank you, Rhodey, Pepper said, a tear rolling down her cheek. No worries. I'll be home soon, Rhodey said, and then the phone line went dead. Friday, contact Natasha. Get her to find out who told the media about Peter, Tony growled. On it, boss, Friday responded. Hey. Pepper's hands were cupping his face, thumbs smoothing over his cheeks. Breathe. He's okay. Rhodey's got him and is bringing him home. Just breathe. Tony hadn't realized his breathing had quickened. He wrapped his arms around Pepper, pulling her into a tight hug. His heart was beating rapidly in his chest, and he took a few measured breaths, matching them to Pepper's. This is a mess. Tony pulled back, scrubbing a hand down his face once his breathing was back under control. I'll fix it, Pepper said. We'll have to do a press conference now, but no matter. We can bury this before it gets any further. Tony felt a small spark of arousal as he watched Pepper go from worried mum to protective mum and badass CEO in a single second. She had that fiery glint in her eye that Tony had fallen in love with, and had no doubt this press conference would not only put every single media outlet in their place, but also ruin several people's careers. Pepper Stark was not a mother to be trifled with. Just tell me where to stand, Tony said. Pepper leaned forward and captured Tony's lips in a kiss. She kissed him deeply, and Tony could feel the worried tension that still lingered. Before he could do something about that, she was pulling away. Go get Peter's room ready for him, Pepper instructed. I'll go prepare some food for our guests. They may be here for a while. Rhodey had seen corpses with better colour than Peter, and he checked the rearview mirror again. They had managed to get Peter into the car, MJ and Flash sliding in behind them, and Ned taking the front seat. Peter had automatically rested his head against the cool window, eyes slipping closed. If it wasn't for the movement of his chest as he breathed, Rhodey would have been worried that he was dead. Is he dead? Flash asked, leaning across MJ to poke at Peter. There was a slap, and Rhodey smirked to see Flash cradling his hand against his chest. Was just checking, Flash huffed. He stinks. Like you handle the reporters any better, MJ scoffed. You stood there with your mouth hanging open like an idiot. Don't deny it. We've seen the video. It's already up? Rhodey asked. Yeah, Ned answered. Like maybe 10 minutes after we got ambushed. They didn't waste any time, Rhodey muttered. Pepper's gonna kill him. Where are we going? Ned asked. Not that I'm complaining, War Machine, sir. I should just probably let my parents know. I'm taking you to the Avengers Tower, Rhodey said. Congratulations, you've landed yourself in a shit show. Don't worry, Pepper will contact your parents when you get there, if she hasn't already. Wicked, Ned breathed. Speaking of the tower, we're nearly there, Rhodey said. I need you to all lean down and get out of sight. Rhodey made sure they all complied, and winced as Peter moaned pathetically as MJ manoeuvred him across her lap. I'm warning you again, Parker. Don't puke on me, Flash mumbled. As they approached, Rhodey could see media crews waiting outside the front of the tower, waiting for any type of shot that they could get. Before they even reached the view of them, Rhodey was turning down a side street into the closest parking structure. He drove down as deep as the structure went, and pulled up to a dead end where a single keypad stood. Rhodey wound down the window and entered a PIN number. No way, Ned breathed, peeking above the dashboard as he watched the concrete wall slide away. It was a safety feature of the Avengers Tower if it were to ever get compromised. The garage under the tower had a secret tunnel that led to the closest parking structure, making it one of the easier escapes if they ever needed to. Rhodey smiled smugly and drove through, the concrete wall sliding back into place with a shuddering boom. He drove all the way to the tower's garage and parked the car, switching off the engine. Just wait, Rhodey said, opening the car door. I want to make sure no reporters snuck down here. He closed the door and looked around, but the garage was empty. He wasn't surprised that Tony and Pepper had locked the tower down tight. He walked around to Peter's door and opened it carefully. All right, you can all get out, Rhodey said as he helped Peter sit up. Head to the elevator over there, but don't touch it. Peter. Rhodey tried to keep his voice low, but he felt Peter flinch. I'm sorry. We're nearly there, though. I don't feel good, Peter slurred as Rhodey pulled him out of the car. Peter was lighter than Rhodey expected him to be, and he easily draped one of Peter's arms around his shoulders and the other wrapped around his waist to keep him up. Feel free to puke on that Flash kid, Rhodey muttered. He seems like a dick. Rhodey practically carried Peter to the elevator and ushered them all inside. Welcome back, Colonel Rhodes. Boss will be relieved that you're here, Friday said. Friday, mute! Rhodey snapped as Peter wailed, body dropping like lead as his hands came up to press the headphones painfully against his head. Rhodey wasn't expecting the movement and dropped Peter to the ground. He crouched down as Peter curled up in a ball and saw tears leaking from his tightly shut eyes. Holy shit, Flash gasped, staring at Peter with wide, frightened eyes. Friday, dim the lights, Rhodey commanded. The lights dimmed, leaving just enough light for them to see. Dim the lights on Stark's floor too. Alert them not to make any noise when the doors open, Rhodey continued. He turned to the three pale teenagers. When the doors open, I want you to go straight. You'll find the living room easily. I want you to wait there for either me, Pepper, or Tony. Understood? Yes, sir, the three teenagers chorused. Rhodey nodded, fighting a small grin as the teenagers obeyed his command, and hovered over Peter as the elevator rose steadily. It slowed before coming to a stop and the door slid open. The three teenagers ushered out instantly, doing as Rhodey directed them. He ignored them, instead choosing to focus on Pepper and Tony, who hovered anxiously, faces drawn tight. Bringing a finger to his lips, he motioned for them not to make a noise. Then, he motioned Tony to help him lift Peter. Tony nodded, crouching down, and gently got his hands under Peter's legs. He winced as Peter whimpered, body tensing even further. He looked up at his friend whose hands were under Peter's shoulders. Rhodey silently mouthed, 1, 2, 3, and they lifted Peter. They easily carried him down the hall and to Peter's bedroom. As they entered, Rhodey was relieved to see that his room was already set up. The sheets were pulled back and the room was practically dark. A lined bin was on the bedside table, along with 2 tablets and a glass of water. Gently, they laid Peter down, Tony gently soothing away the whimper that Peter let out. Together, He and Tony gently got Peter's shoes off, and Peter sighed. Tony gave Rhodey a grim look, then moved to Peter's side. Gently, he lifted the headphones off, and Peter whined low in his throat. "Peter, I'm sorry, kid. I need you to take something for your head." "Won't work," Peter whined. "Please," Tony said. "Just try." Peter whined again, but started to pull himself up. Rhodey helped him sit while Tony grabbed the 2 pills and the glass of water. When Peter was steady, Tony pressed the pills to Peter's lips, which parted at the touch. Rhodey watched, tense and ready to move in case the boy threw up again. Peter took the pills, swallowed the water that Tony poured into his mouth, and slumped on the pillows once more. Tony gently put the headphones back on and smoothed Peter's sweaty hair back. "Friday, black out this room," Tony said as he got to his feet. Rhodey followed, and as soon as they reached the door, the room went completely dark, and they gently closed the door. "Friday, alert me if Peter's in distress," Tony sighed, scrubbing a hand down his face. "That does not look like a normal migraine," Rhodey expelled out a breath. "No." Tony closed his eyes briefly before opening them again. "Friday, call Bruce down here. I want him to take a look at Peter. Something isn't right." Pepper desperately wanted to follow Tony and Rhodey to Peter's room, but she had to deal with the 3 teenagers standing in her living room. "Are you kids all right?" Pepper asked. "Ned, you okay?" "I'm fine, Mrs. Stark," Ned nodded. "He was telling the truth," Flash mumbled to himself. Unbelievable. Pepper raised her eyebrows as the girl, who she assumed was the MJ that Peter had been telling her about, elbowed Flash in the gut. "Shut up, Flash!" MJ glared. "Sorry about him. We're fine, by the way." "Oh, yeah," Flash nodded. "I'm fine. Flash Thompson. It's an honor to meet you." "Flash?" Pepper repeated, sounding skeptical. "His real name's Eugene," Ned offered. Flash whipped his head around to Ned and glared at him. "Shut up, loser!" MJ elbowed Flash again. "Right. I'm glad you're all okay," Pepper said. "And I apologize that you've been caught up in all of this. We were planning on doing this gently and give Peter some time to adjust, but that's gone out the window. So, first things first. Did any of you tell the media about Peter?" Ned shook his head almost violently. "What? No, I can keep a secret. I've been keeping Peter's secrets. Ow! What did you elbow me for?" "We didn't tell anyone," MJ said, staring at Pepper directly in the eye. "Flash didn't know, and none of the other kids at school did either." "Truth," Flash said. "I personally would not do that to Peter." MJ and Ned both rolled their eyes. "Okay, fine. I wouldn't have believed him, and I would have teased him for it." Flash huffed, and then caught Pepper's disapproving glare. "You know, all in good fun." "All right," Pepper finally said. "Someone else had leaked this." "You should try the school secretary," Flash suggested. Ned and MJ turned to look at Flash, giving him a dead stare. "What? Everyone knows that she knows everyone's business," Flash grumbled. "She'll do anything for extra money. She blackmailed me before." "What did she have on you?" MJ asked, curious. Ned's cheeks flushed. "Nothing." "Okay, we'll look into that," Pepper nodded. "Thank you." She paused and looked over her shoulder when she heard voices. Tony and Rhodey had entered the room, heads bent together and looking more worried than Pepper liked. "Is he okay?" Pepper asked as they got closer. "Not really," Tony sighed. "I think something else happened. That is not a normal migraine. Bruce is on his way down to take a look at him." Pepper nodded, and when she turned back to the 3 teenagers, she frowned when she saw Ned and MJ looking significantly at each other. "Something you want to share?" Tony asked, noticing the look as well. "No," Ned and MJ said in unison. Before anyone could respond to their strange behavior, the elevator door was opening, and Bruce Banner was stepping out, gaining the attention and adoration of the 3 teenagers. "No way! It's Bruce Banner!" Flash yelped, jaw going slack. "Hey," Bruce smiled awkwardly, giving a wave to the 3 teens staring at him. "I saw you guys on the news." "Awesome," Ned grinned. Would it be possible for you to sign my chemistry book?" "Maybe after I've seen Peter?" Bruce suggested with a smile. "Right," Ned nodded, trying to play it off like it was no big deal. "That's cool." "Smooth," MJ nodded at Ned. "I would have been more confident if I had my hat," Ned sighed. "Like a hat could save you from that awkward encounter," Flash scoffed. "Loser." "Right," Bruce drawled, confused and a little amused by the exchange. "Where is Peter?" "In his room." Tony gestured to the hallway with a wave of his hand. "Friday has blacked out the room. He isn't responding well to light." "He's vomited," Rhodey said. "We gave him Tylenol for the pain with some water." "It doesn't look like a normal migraine," Tony warned. Bruce nodded and gently patted Tony's arm. "I'll go take a look at him now. Don't worry. I'm sure he'll be fine." "Sensory overload!" Bruce turned at the sudden outburst. He glanced at Tony before the two of them turned to look at Ned, who had shouted. MJ had her hand across her eyes while Flash was looking at Ned like he'd never witnessed anything like him before. "What was that?" Tony asked, taking a step forward. "It's sensory overload," Ned blurted out. That's why it's not a normal migraine." "Has this happened before?" Bruce asked, immediately making mental notes. He would add this to the file he was making up for Peter. Ned nodded. "Yeah, after Uncle Ben died, Peter was there when Ben was shot. Loud noises and flashes of light sometimes triggers, flashbacks, I think?" "Oh, God," Pepper murmured. "That's good to know," Bruce nodded. "Dramatic events like that can trigger some flashbacks. Being surrounded and feeling suffocated like they were, it's no wonder it triggered something." "Shit," Tony sighed. "Friday's monitoring him," Bruce assured Tony and Pepper. "Let's just give him some time to rest. She can alert us if anything changes. I don't want to interrupt the quiet or add any light at the moment." "Thank you, Bruce." Pepper smiled at him warmly. "It's no problem," Bruce said. "I can stay here too, for the time being, so we can get to him faster if you like." Tony patted Bruce on the back. "Sounds good, buddy. Hey, can you sign Ned's chemistry book in the meantime?" Bruce flushed as Ned scrambled for his backpack and yanked out his chemistry book. Tony eyed the three teenagers in his living room as they sat on the couch and watched TV. Happy had only just managed to get May out of her apartment and was on his way back to the tower with her. Bruce had disappeared to Tony's lab to start creating a medical file for Peter. "I can take them back," Rhodey said, joining Tony's side in the kitchen. "It's pretty clear they didn't tell anyone." "I've got Natasha looking into the secretary," Pepper said, thanks to Flash's suggestion. Tony hummed. "What is it?" Pepper asked, dancing her fingers over Tony's arm where he was leaning on the kitchen bench. "I know something," Tony muttered, jerking his head in the direction of the teens. "You think they planned it?" Rhodey asked, glancing at the teenagers before looking back at Tony. "Have you seen that handshake Ned and Peter do?" Tony scoffed. "No way Ned's selling Peter out." "No, they know something about Peter that they're not telling us." "What?" Pepper asked. Tony pressed his lips together and shook his head. "I don't know." "You think they're keeping some kind of illness from you?" Rhodey asked. "That they know more about Peter's headaches than they're letting on?" "May would have told us if Peter was sick," Pepper frowned. "Yeah," Tony agreed and looked Pepper in the eyes. "But what if they're keeping it from May, too? Ned seemed to know an awful lot about Peter having sensory overloads." "No surprises if he's keeping things to himself," Rhodey said, squeezing Tony's shoulder. "He is your son, after all." Tony shot Rhodey a withering glare. "Like father, like son," Rhodey grinned unhelpfully. "Let's just see what May says when she gets here," Pepper said. "Rhodey, would you mind taking them back home?" "Of course," Rhodey said. "I'll see if I can subtly get anything out of them in the car." He clapped Tony one more time on the shoulder before moving into the living room to round up the teenagers. Peter blinked awake and sluggishly lifted a hand to wipe at the crust that coated his eyes. He rolled onto his back, breathing deeply. The nausea that had been rolling constantly through him was gone, and the pulsing pain in his head was no longer beating like a drum. Hesitantly, he sat up and waited for any sign that he was still in sensory overload, but there was nothing. "Friday, can you bring the lights on just a little?" Peter whispered into the room. Slowly the lights faded on, and Peter was relieved that it didn't make him want to cry. He eyed the bin and water on the bedside table before gently swinging his legs off the bed. He was a little shaky and his stomach rumbled loudly. He recoiled as he sniffed, the lingering scent of vomit still on his clothes. He pulled off his clothes and quickly changed into a clean pair of PJs. He moved to the bathroom, gave his teeth a quick clean before he shuffled slowly out of his bedroom. The hallways were dimly lit, and Peter whispered thanks to Friday as he shuffled towards the kitchen. It was empty, as was the living room. As Peter entered the kitchen, he caught the time on the oven clock and blinked when he saw that it was nearly 3 in the morning. Right, everyone is asleep, Peter thought. Opening the pantry, Peter rummaged around inside until he found some plain chips. Whilst he wasn't feeling sick, He didn't want to test the limits of his stomach just yet. He had just ripped into the bag and shoved a handful in his mouth when he heard rapid footsteps echoing down the hall. He spun around, cheeks bulging as Pepper and Tony came hurrying into the room. "Hi, sweetie, are you okay?" Pepper asked, reaching him first. Her hands automatically went to his forehead, feeling for a temperature. "I'm fine." Peter spoke around the chips in his mouth, wincing as a few crumbs dropped out. "Chew, swallow, then speak," Pepper instructed with an amused smile. Peter smiled sheepishly and hurried to chew the chips and swallow them roughly. "Sorry, I'm okay." "How's the head?" Tony came to Pepper's side, peering closely at Peter. "Better," Peter nodded. "A lot better." "You had us so worried." Pepper smoothed back his sweaty curls. "Sorry," Peter winced. "I didn't mean to scare you." "We know, buddy," Tony said. "You've just never seen a migraine that bad or sensory overload look like that before." Peter swallowed, eyes darting between his parents. "Ned told you about that?" Tony nodded. "He said you started getting them after Ben passed?" Peter was never so glad to have Ned as his best friend and his guy in the chair. Ned had given them the perfect excuse that didn't involve explaining a certain spider that had bit him and the fact that his senses were now dialed to 11. "Yeah," Peter nodded. "Just sometimes loud, unexpected noises trigger it. I wasn't expecting those reporters outside." "We're so sorry about that," Pepper winced. "We didn't catch it in time." "How did they find out?" Peter asked. I thought you hadn't told anyone yet." "We didn't," Tony growled. "Your secretary decided to ignore the NDA we gave the school. She sold your story to the media." "Oh," Peter whispered, ducking his head. "For money, right?" "Don't worry, she's in big trouble," Tony assured Peter. "I'm so sorry, kid." "It's not your fault." Peter tried to smile, but he could feel that it was small and sad. "What happens now?" "We can discuss that more in the morning," Pepper hushed. "Right now, you need to be in bed." Tony wrapped an arm around Peter's shoulder and led him out of the kitchen. Peter felt warm and comforted as Pepper and Tony led him back to his room. They entered with him, Pepper immediately scooping up his soiled clothes while Tony tucked him into bed. "Thanks," Peter yawned, not realizing how drained he was still feeling until he was back in bed. "You need rest for the morning. May's got a lot of questions about you keeping your migraines to yourself." "And so do we," Pepper warned. Peter groaned and shuffled down the bed until he was comfy, resting on his head once more. He smiled as his eyes drifted close, and a kiss was peppered to his temple. "Glad you're feeling better, kid." "Me too," Peter mumbled. "Sleep tight," Pepper hummed. "We'll see you later this morning." "Okay, Mum," Peter mumbled, already drifting back to sleep. Hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. It's Eleanor, and I hope you're having a lovely day today. So long time no see. Like, almost 2 months. Oops. Didn't mean for that to happen. It's like, I didn't even really mean to be taking a break, but a lot of stuff was going on in my personal life, and, I just didn't really have so much time. But I'm back. I've been excited. I've been working on a lot of, other stuff that's not for this channel. I've been on a couple of projects, which, I'll let you know about when those are up and out in the world, and of course I will want to share those with you. But, this chapter was a bit of a doozy. I guess I kind of got a little bit discouraged because I made it through almost all of this chapter, and then, basically the file got corrupted, and it was all just, gone. I had to start again, and I just kept thinking, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it again. I worked so hard on it the first time, and it's not going to be as good, but, you'll never have heard the first time, so I guess you can't tell me if it was just as good or if it was better, but hopefully it wasn't too bad. And I've really missed this fic. It's so fun, and, things are, happening, and, Peter, keeping stuff from, Tony and Pepper, and, how will they work around this whole Spider-Man thing, and Ned is the bestest friend ever. Oh my goodness, he's amazing. And, MJ, and I like Flash being there, he's just, vibing, and, obviously, he's such a dick, but, in, a fun way. He's fun. And, okay, can we talk about Peter calling Pepper Mom for the first time? Ugh, my heart, it was breaking. But let me know what you guys thought about this chapter in the comments down below. You know, I love talking to you guys about fanfic. It's just so much fun, and I've also missed you guys, so tell me, how have you guys been? What have you been doing recently? Anything been going on in your life? Any news? Any fun things? I like to know. It's just, I'm nosy. Okay, that's at the end of the day, I'm just nosy. You can also subscribe if you want to be notified whenever I make new videos, and be sure to like the video, you know, if you liked it, and to boost my serotonin levels. I also have a Discord if you want to join that. The link will be down below. But until I see you again, be sure to practice some self-care. Go to bed on time. You need to be getting all those hours. Please drink some water. Eat your 5 a day. Brush your teeth and remember to take your meds if you have to. I love you guys. Please look after yourself. Because yes, this is a threat. And I will catch you guys laters.